All righty. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone in Australia, including Miss Kira Sutherland. Good morning to you.
Good morning. No,
Um,
10 a.m. 10 a.m. for me.
10 a.m. on Monday, July 24th.
Hmm.
I want to thank everyone who will slowly start coming in and who is here already. I have Emerald Buddha. Thank you for coming in. I have Nancy at Crohn's Intuition. Thank you right now for starting to come in. I want to introduce everyone to Miss Kira Sutherland, who is a naturopath, astrologer, focusing a bit more with medical astrology. Fill in some of the other blanks because you have quite
Oh.
a resume of titles.
I'm an Australian naturopath, which is slightly different to a US naturopath. I'm an undergraduate degree in naturopathy, but I hold degrees in naturopathy, nutrition, herbal medicine, and a diploma of homeopathy.
Okay.
Oh, and post-grad degree in sports nutrition, just to add to it.
Yes.
But I'm also a practicing astrologer, and so my specialty is medical astrology. Yeah.
Which is what we're going to hit on in this next hour. I'm going to bend Kira's mind and have her give us some insight a little bit about the different signs and planets and the influences that they have that can strengthen and weaken us when it comes to healing and taking care of ourselves spiritually and physically. If anyone does have questions as they're coming in, I'm with Kira for about an hour. I'm going to spend a good chunk of the time, 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes talking. But let me know if you have comments or questions. Put them in capital letters if you want Kira to answer. And I will pop them up on the bottom. But for now, tell us a little bit about, okay, we know astrology. How specifically did you come into medical astrology? We know your naturopathic background, but
Sure.
how did you get from that to medical astrology?
Yeah. So I live in Australia, but I'm born and raised in San Francisco, and I did grow up. Well, I grew up with two scientists, but I grew up with my mom's best friend being an astrologer of other things, and so I did grow up with a lot of energy medicine, astrology, things like that. But when I formally started studying naturopathy in my early 20s, I got really frustrated that there was no energetic system to put things through. Everyone was finishing this 4-year degree and then they were off to study traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda because these all have systems to analyze the body. And I was like, our medicine is as old in the West. Where is our system? And at the same time as I was doing naturopathy, I decided to take an astrology course, like a formal astrology course. And I realized there was a connection. Astrology used to be taught in medicine until 300 or 400 years ago. We would look at, we had things called the temperaments and the, oh my God, I'm having a name right. Temperaments and the humors, and a lot of medicine used to be based more on the elements and hot and cold. And when you study naturopathy, you do study herbs and read these old herbal books that talk about, oh, this planet is ruled by Mars and this is by Venus. And so I was like, wait a second, this does exist, but we've left it 300 or 400 years ago. We kicked it out of medicine as we became more reductionistic. And even though naturopathy is very alternative or complementary, and when I was studying, there was a lot more spiritual side to medicine than probably is taught now. For me, medical astrology was just that missing link of energetically looking at the body and understanding why we're all different, because not the same remedy doesn't work the same for every person.
Yeah. I think, and you could probably answer this, do you feel there are some doctors that are not, I know it's not a large spectrum, but there are some doctors that may be closeted medical astrologers?
There absolutely are. There absolutely are. And, I teach multiple levels of medical astrology, and there's a lot of nurses and doctors and I've taught a lot of them. And it's just about when they're open to that or not. Yeah. Yeah. And we're not, medical astrology is not replacing medicine. I love modern medicine and what doctors and surgery, and we can't not have that. But it's a whole way of kind of analyzing or assessing your constitutional strengths and weaknesses to better understand why you have certain ailments or why certain remedies might work better for you. So it's a fun way to play with somebody's health on a whole nother scope.
Yeah, I think it's very important to, yes, you take the training that you have, through school, but also to explore. I was going to see a chiropractor many, like 2 decades ago. And I had this one practitioner student who was doing the techniques, but she, when she interviewed me, she was just like, you know what? I've been reading about something that they're not teaching us here in school, and I think you would be a really good candidate for me to try it on. And it was a form of healing. It was like kinesiology and doing something else. And I feel like it actually did some more purpose than the actual chiropractic work. So when she graduated, I started seeing her as someone that she was training me so that she could train on. And it was wonderful. But she says, don't tell the school this because I can lose, my diploma and all this stuff. I go, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's, and there's a lot of people that practice different forms of energetic medicine that probably aren't overly advertising it. I run 2 totally separate websites. I have a naturopathy sports nutrition website and I have a medical astrology website, just because even though it's something I use all the time, I know for some people they struggle with that. And if they just want to see me nutritionally or, work on their immune system, just because I might be running that pattern in my background, I can be entirely evidence-based for people, or I can be much more esoteric and spiritual. And it's not my life's journey my thing is to be here doing it and helping teach people or helping people with their health. My journey isn't to be on the soapbox telling everybody they need to do it. It's if they want to get into it, I'm all for it and helping. And if they're not into it, I'm okay with that too.
Exactly. It's if it feels like it's something that's really inspiring to them, go ahead and pursue it on the side. You take it in a different direction. I want to point out something. I want to introduce to you Astrological Tarot. She's known as Michelle Marie. She does have Western astrology information background. Do you know this book here?
Yes, that is a book that is more Eastern Jyotish or what would be Vedic astrology. But yes, I have that book. But I do practice Western medical astrology rather than Jyotish, although I do have a lot of understanding of it. But yes, it's a beautiful book.
There's no way of melding, right? Because they're completely different.
No, they do meld. There's an enormous amount of crossover, and whether Western astrology really came out of more Eastern, some people would say it did. Yes, there's a lot of similar principles. We just look at charts slightly differently.
Okay.
Yeah. No, yeah. There's an overlap. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's just go right into right now talking a little bit about medical astrology. So I brought Kira in because I want to focus more on the healing aspect. Not that medical astrology isn't healing, but you can apply the planets, the signs. In a nutshell, I know we got 10 planets and 12 signs. Let's focus on the month of Leo. Okay, let's talk about some of this energy of Leo. Leo's fire. It's a masculine sign. It's a very external sign. I just finished doing a video talking about Leo. So if you want to pick up on that and talk about the parts of the body that it rules, the weaknesses and strengths, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So Leo, as you said, is fire. So fire is hot and dry. And as you are in North America, so you're in the middle of summer, you're experiencing that. I'm actually in opposite seasons. So it's a little bit trickier health-wise when you're dealing with somebody in the Southern Hemisphere on opposite seasons to the energetics of astrology. But Leo itself, hot and dry, So we're losing moisture. We're things can be more aggravated. Things can be too much sun, as we know, overstimulating. So, but it is a time to be out there and enjoying and oh my gosh, what does Leo rule? So Leo in the physical body rules the heart. It rules the chest area, the heart, the spine, specifically behind the heart, so the thoracic spine. We do give it rulership of the bone marrow, where we actually make our blood cells. And some people would give it rulership of the spleen. And the spleen is where blood cells go to mature. And it's this very vascular, very blood-rich organ. And in Eastern philosophy, like in Chinese medicine, the spleen is what holds our core chi, or our core energy, which is similar to Leo, and its rulership by the sun actually is the ruling planet of Leo, and the sun is all about our core vitality and energy. So so Leo is heart. Its opposite sign, Aquarius, rules circulation, but they are a closed system. So Leo also rules pleasure and creativity. So it's a great it's a time seasonally, especially in the north, where we should be using that creative force, whether it's creativity in growing things or creating things and pleasures. I always love, it's festival season in the Northern Hemisphere. So you see all the rock concerts and festivals and gatherings, because it's that joyous celebration time. And we need to be doing that with our health as well. Being, creative expression is fabulous for our health. And, but looking at, it's not that during each season we have to focus on we don't have to focus on our heart health right now. It's just the ruling body part. But it is a great time to look at how you expend your vitality and your energy. And it's a great time really to nourish, you have all that sunshine to create vitamin D and nourish the body. It's not a depleting season per se.
When it comes to an opposing sign like Aquarius, if I could think astrologically, for any of the opposing signs like Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, can these opposing signs being around that energy or whatnot, can that somehow, I know physically, I don't know how that can nourish the sign, but how can it heal, like being in that opposition of that sign?
Well, there's always that balance. Astrology is all about oppositions and balancing between the two, and not being too extreme of one and remembering the other. In Leo season, though, I would say more, when I look at signs and balance, yes, there's the opposite sign, but there's also looking at the opposite element. So the opposite element to fire is water. And so, in summer we dehydrate more, you get sunburnt, people get exhausted, and we need to, so I more use those opposite fire to water, earth to air elements in balancing. And
I never thought
all the really lush, juicy fruits, that contain a lot of water are in season during summer. And we're more drawn to eating salads rather than stir fries, or, no one wants a soup in summer because a soup is heating, whereas a salad is cooling. And so I use a lot of that opposition of elements nutritionally with people, or activities, getting in the water, going swimming, going to the pool, getting in a stream.
I'm noticing that quite a bit. I've been just pounding down on watermelons, which isn't good, because that means I'm lacking something with water, and that's a problem.
Yeah, but it's also your body naturally trying to balance that out, right?
Yeah, in a sense, but I know they always say you shouldn't drink water before it's too late when you're feeling thirsty. You should be drinking water, not consistently, but before like a large time, like hours of energy, so on and so forth. But that's kind of hard to predict, because you don't know how long you're going to be doing your hike, or so on and so forth.
So true.
Got a question here.
Sure.
Because modern science has officially rejected the validity of medical astrology, which I disagree with. How do you protect yourself against malpractice?
Well, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor. I'm not even a doctor of naturopathy. As I said, I'm a bachelor of health science. I am insured. I have insurance to be a practitioner. And I'm also very cautious about instructions I give. Depending on what country people live in, I have to be more careful than others. And I don't claim to diagnose anything. I use the astrological chart more as a symbolic template to help me with my clinical practice. But when I'm giving clinical practice suggestions, I'm still staying within the boundaries of what I'm insured for and nutritionally or supplement wise. So I'm always staying within my scope. I just use medical astrology as a tool, not to see more, but I don't use it for diagnosis. I would never tell anybody of a disease they have or are gonna have. That's not how it's used. It's more, like people looking at the tongue or looking at, your fingernails, or people do iridology and look at the irises. It's just another tool in my hat. I don't necessarily prescribe specifically off of medical astrology.
How do you feel with physicians that are practicing astrology and they're using it, to diagnose cancer or some form of illness? Because I hear people that if they're really, really good, they can sometimes see when, the body is moving in a certain direction. That's kind of risky, I would say, but.
Yeah, I don't know anyone specifically doing that. I really discourage anybody diagnosing anything specific. It's more, the way I use it is much more about looking at, when I'm doing a reading with somebody or a health assessment, they're coming and telling me what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
And I'm more going and looking at, I can't remove the scientist for who I am. I'm asking all the questions I need to ask about their health and their physicality. I'm not a psychic. This is not a psychic read where I look at your chart and I'm like, oh, you have this and this wrong with you. That's not how this works. It's very much, I'm just using it to confirm what somebody is already telling me, or I'm looking at areas that maybe they're not thinking about that need more support. But treatment wise, I'm always using an evidence-based approach to my treatment.
Yeah. I mean, when I do readings, before I go online, I don't do any questions that's predictive, no third party, anything medical, legal, financial. There are other people there that can take care of you in that realm, So similar to what you're saying, Kira, it's like we're guides, we could sort of maybe guide
highlight
you in the
areas
direction.
people need to look at. I'm not here to tell people, like every year I have people come and they're like, oh, I was told by another astrologer this transit, which is like how the planets are affecting your chart now, this transit could be Cancer. I have to spend 20 minutes saying nobody can predict that. Like I don't do any form of predictive astrology on purpose because it's dangerous what you say to people. And then when they hold within themselves, like I don't want to be a catalyst for them creating something either. If you're into mind body medicine, which most people are that see it.
Yeah.
Medical astrologer. So yeah, I'm very cautious and very aware to stay within my bounds of what I am legally allowed to do in clinical practice.
Yeah. No, that's very important.
Oh, it's scary.
Yeah. And, some people don't understand that, they're just like, well, I hear that you can do this and you can answer that. It's like, no. You gotta go to specialists.
I had someone recently try to book in and they were like, I want to look at this, but I also want you to tell me my timing of this, and what's happening. And I know these timing techniques astrologically. I know how to do them, but I'm like, I don't do that in my reads. That's not my job. So yeah, you learn to have different, anybody playing with medical astrology, hopefully they also have some other forms of healing behind them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I legally am not allowed to treat as a naturopath in Australia, or nutritionist, I'm not allowed to treat cancer. I'm not allowed to treat diabetes, heart disease.
Wow.
There's a list of things I legally cannot treat.
Wow.
It doesn't mean I can't teach someone how to support their general health with food and nutrients, but I just don't go there. There are practitioners that specialize in that, and I would send them on to the integrative doctor I know that specializes in that. That's not my area of knowledge either.
Yeah.
So I've been a practitioner for 30 years. I'm very clear about my areas that I'm good at and my areas where I have blind spots. And if someone comes with one of those issues, I'd much prefer them to go to somebody that I would have seen if that was me. So I do a lot of referral.
Yeah, no, especially in this kind of field that you work in, where you cross in different influences. It's like, well, you know what? I'm not versed in this. I can recommend you to someone else. And that's obviously the safety net for anyone, instead of taking the liberty. It's like, okay, let's see, maybe I can do this, and it ends up being disastrous. And
if someone shows up with liver cancer, I'm like, I don't treat that. I don't actually know how to treat that. Let me send you to the person I would go to if it was me, and and they're happier for it. I don't need every client that comes in my door, right?
Yeah. Michelle puts in another comment here. That makes sense. A friend of mine is a licensed psychologist and has to be careful when incorporating astrology. In India, medical astrology is an acceptable practice, but we're not there yet. Do you think there'll be this open-mindedness here in the U.S.?
It used to be in there. It used to be there, but all practitioners are running different things in the back of their head, right? Whatever things they are into. And yes, there's amazing doctors out there that get into energy medicine and mind-body medicine. And, there's Gabor Mate and, Deepak Chopra. And, there are people being verbal about it. But like I said, my life's journey is not to be on the soapbox to make people convinced. The people that are interested, that want to find me, can find me, and I'm happy in my own little wheelhouse.
Okay, let's move from this, because I don't want you to feel as a guest that you're having to defend anything of this. But it's interesting, and it is important for people to know, so they do come across this video. They don't expect you to do a whole chart to find out if they're going to have breast cancer or anything like that.
Nope. And even this comes up a lot in astrology. People are like, are there signatures for things? Is there a signature? Are there specific placements which are going to mean I have bipolar or schizophrenia or ADHD or cancer? And it's like, I avoid the idea that there are signatures, because I think it's the whole makeup and, health is the combination of genetics.
Yeah.
What you choose to do, what you choose to think, what you choose to feel, what you choose not to do and feel and think. And then there's also some shit bad luck. There's accidents and
there's environmental, right?
I have one of my really close girlfriends is probably on her last 2 months, and she's only in her 40s, and she's a naturopath, and she lives the world's healthiest life, but she's just had this unfortunate cancer situation that's come up, and that's what I don't even know where to explain that one. It's a journey that our bodies go on.
Sometimes the DNA just rules it. It's like you can do whatever you want to lessen, prolong the life, but ideally, depending on how it's managed or whatnot, you may succumb to that. You can have the DNA is already set. It's what I was mentioning a second ago, the environment, depending where we're working, the air, so on and so forth. The way food is being treated and what's in it. I don't know how you feel about this now, Kira. Do you feel food now I think it's better off? Do you feel it's a little bit safer now than it was 15, 20 years ago in regards for like pesticides?
Absolutely. There's always organic, yes. And as a naturopath nutritionist, we've always been pushing for organic. But yeah, absolutely. From the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the stuff being spread, we didn't know of a lot of, problems with pesticides. And, still to this day, pesticides are tested individually for their safety. They're not tested 5 pesticides put together, which is actually what we do to plants. But we are becoming more aware, and we are getting back to some better farming practices, and we are lessening the chemical load. But there's so many chemicals, like the chemical load on our bodies is astronomical compared to 50 or 100 years ago. But yes, I think it is getting better, and the awareness and the acceptance that the nutritional value of our food has been very depleted from farming practices and soil depletion and non-crop rotation. But I still think there's a long way to go.
Yeah. Any change overall at a global level, honestly, I don't think I'm not going to be seeing it. I don't think we're going to see it in our lifetime. At least we're in the process of seeing what's going to happen, but I don't think any generation up ahead is going to be experiencing any of this.
We're trying, we're working at it, but yeah,
it's like we make steps forward, but we still end up falling back, or we just get stuck. And of course, global warming, that affects everything. The bees,
the bees.
We need the healing the best way that we can. So I'm going to put here what Woolly Hermit, who's known as Mel. As a smoker, I always feel guilty when I hear of other non-smokers getting lung cancer. I don't get it.
Well, something like 50% of lung cancers have nothing to do with smoking. It's an organ that experiences a lot of issues. So, and we're also, some lung cancers are due to asbestos exposure, secondhand exposure as kids. I didn't grow up with smoking parents, but I grew up in the days where you would see people driving and closed windows. Secondhand smoke is deemed as dangerous as actually smoking, I think, these days. I'm not quite sure, but the lungs do a lot of other things, and a lot can go wrong with them. So yeah.
So I remember growing up in Southern California in the late 70s, 80s, when we always had the smog alerts, and you would always see that brown film. I could still remember it.
It's still in LA, isn't it?
Not as bad, honestly, Kira, not as bad as I remember it. It would be brown, and I remember flying into LA as a teenager from New York and just seeing the brown film of, right across the sky. And you can smell it. It burns your eyes, it burns your nose. And
I remember.
I don't even know, even as a kid, if being exposed to that, if that actually strengthens, it creates like almost an immunity to anything else when you're exposed to something.
I don't know. It also depends on your genetics and what do you have good processing of chemicals in the body? A lot goes down to the liver health. A lot goes down to, have you inherited genes that make methylation more difficult or not? But that's probably getting a bit too medical. Yeah. And then what you choose to do with your body, choosing to exercise or eat well will keep a lot of genes that you don't want active. It will keep them asleep. And so I think we forget, they talk about, genetics is the gun, but your lifestyle is actually loading the gun or not. And so, and then there's people that just have these amazing constitutions that do everything and anything not well health-wise, yet they live till 80 or 90. Although I think we're losing those constitutions over the generations. I think, if you look back to our grandparents and great grandparents that didn't have as much exposure and didn't have up to chemicals and were growing up on, farming, growing your own food, or they had their own cows. And, I don't want to get into a raw milk discussion, but less adulterated foods and lifestyles and sugar. Let's talk about sugar. Sugar. Astrologically, sugar is ruled by the planet Venus. That's our sweet tooth. Venus is about pleasure and taste. And look, we need sugars from fruit and glucose itself is what our body, our brain fuels itself off of, unless you're in a ketogenic state, which is a different story in itself. But we pure sugars, actual lollies or candy sugars. At the turn into the 1900s, I think I'm going to make up these numbers, but I'm close. We were only eating 4 or 5 pounds of sugar a year.
Wow.
That's it. That's, in the 1800s, that's all. Sugar's expensive, and treats were treats. They were every now and then. And I know that in the last decade, the estimate of sugar intake is like, I could Google it, but it's like the average person eats 60 or 70 pounds of sugar a year. How are we not changing how our body is operating? And yeah.
Wow.
It's scary. In medical astrology, if you go back hundreds of years, the planet Mars and the planet Saturn were called the malefic, mal meaning bad, the bad causing planets. And they were the planets that were said to cause more health issues. Mars creates pain and inflammation, and it's like infections and like having a virus or an accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
An accident can be a very Mars energy. Saturn causes chronic complaints, under-functioning, slow functioning, restriction. It would be arthritis, things like that. And so Mars and Saturn were these what we call malefics, or the big baddies health-wise. And Jupiter and Venus. Venus is about pleasure and beauty, and Jupiter is abundance and growth. But Venus rules sugar and Jupiter rules fats.
Wait.
And they were these benefics. If they were sitting in certain parts of your chart, that was great for your health. That was like good luck or a guardian angel for some health stuff. Whereas I think in modern times, yes, Mars and Saturn cause issues in people's charts, but we are now living in a time where we are so abundant in food and access to fatty foods and to sugars, and we're addicted. We are designed as humans to want fat and sugar because they were harder to find in nature. You had to hunt for your meats to get the fat or fish or whatever. There wasn't the seed oils everywhere, and sugar was, fruits, or you got a hold of a hive of honey. Sugar's not naturally abundant in nature. And so we have this, drive to want these foods because they're calorie dense. You get a lot for your money. And they were harder to access. So we're driven to want those, but now we're living in a society where they're so abundant that I often see astrologically, we're in excess. We have too much Venus and Jupiter, too much pleasure. I'm not saying I don't eat chocolate, but our downfall these days is what was traditionally referred to as our benefic planets, our, joy bringers, because we live in a society that wants that instant hit, that dopamine, that serotonin, that pleasure. Hard work is hard work, right? Health is hard work.
It is. That's why we got the coffee, the Java junkies, the fast foods, all of that, fast foods, the way it breaks down in our bodies, so on and so forth. It's amazing. And I did share a conversation with someone about sugars and how we are addicted to it. We may not know it, but we're always reaching for that sweet tooth. I'm no different. I'm trying to cut back on it. I'm trying to cut back on it due to a physical that I had. And so, it's been hard. Oh, it's been hard to kind of walk, away from the bakery and go in a different direction.
I mean, health is not about being perfect, because that has its own issues. But it's so hard. We are physiologically, our genetics drives us for those things. And if people are like, oh, I don't have a sweet tooth at all, but you're big, you have a lot of alcohol is still considered a sugar to the body. And like my dad, who actually is a scientist and knows a ton of nutrition, he decided, he was having too much sugar, too much chocolate, whatever. So he's like, I'm going to totally give up sugar. And I said, oh, that's great, Dad. That's lovely. And then I went to visit, and he was having 5 pieces of fruit in the morning. And I'm like, dude, that's still sugar. Like, yes, fruit sugar is 100 times better because it's coming with water and it's coming with, a lot of nutrients and fiber. But I was like, your blood sugar levels are still, 5 is too many.
Did he cut back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was wondering why his triglycerides were still going up. And I was like, well, it could be those 5 pieces of fruit at breakfast.
I think I was Isn't it no more than one serving a day of, I know it depends on every.
It depends on how much sport you're doing. I kind of say to people, most people, 2 pieces of fruit a day, you're going to be fine.
Okay.
Most people. But again, it really depends. And again, if you're out exercising an hour and a half a day, that number goes way up.
Exactly. The calories and all that. Let me put here what Mel was saying about salt. How do you feel about the salt intake? Our bodies are mostly salt anyway.
Yeah, salt's very controversial because modern processed food is full of sugar, fat, and salt, because that is the third driver of what we want. Again, salt was incredibly hard to access for thousands of years. It was one of the most expensive things to trade, right? Was salt, for people that didn't live anywhere near the ocean. And your body does crave a lot of salt and needs quite a lot of salt, but it is dependent on each person individually. If they have high blood pressure, it's a different situation. But I am a person who is not afraid of salt, but it, I don't want to generalize and say everybody's. I think we've been told to be more scared of it than we need to be, but there are people that still need to be cautious. So, but yeah.
Well, there's also the health element of iodine salt versus sea salt.
Yeah.
Could you touch upon that briefly, just the differences?
Yeah. So, salt by itself, sodium chloride, is just that. It's just it's a sodium and a chloride put together. Whereas a lot of, growing up, a lot of us grew up with iodized salt. So they've added an iodine molecule. And the reason we did that was because a lot of places, especially in the US, so I can do this more historically from the US, there's a lot of places in the US where the soil is very low in iodine. And iodine is a micronutrient that's not needed in huge amounts, but it is vital in our bodies. And low iodine status for a fetus, for a baby while it's developing in utero, low iodine status of the mother to the fetus, we know if it's too low, causes a bunch of different physical ailments. There's a decrease. There's actual links to lowering of IQ. Iodine is the main mineral that's in charge of your thyroid. Now, if you have a thyroid problem, it doesn't mean your mom didn't have enough iodine. Don't go blaming your mom. But the thyroid, which is all about our metabolism, needs a certain amount of iodine. So at some point, we started iodizing our salt, which actually is probably not a bad thing. But then in the 70s and 80s or 60s, I don't know when this came about, but all of a sudden everyone's like, but salt, just sodium chloride, where's all the other minerals? And so we started moving to sea salt, or we started moving to rock salt, or the big thing is pink Himalayan rock salt, which we now know probably contains some other heavy metals we don't want, but I don't know enough about that. Okay. You can Google that. But so we started using all these other forms of sodium, which are great because they had more of the they had more minerals than just sodium chloride. So what I suggest to most of my clients these days is, I'm a fan of like iodized sea salt or iodized rock salt in order to help get that little bit more iodine. But again, you don't want to go out and take iodine if you don't know if you need it or not, It's in seaweeds, especially, if you eat a lot of sushi or fish, you're getting some good iodine. So it's also looking at your own iodine status, but also the status in the soil where you live. I live in Australia. There's parts of Australia that have good iodine in the soil and other states where it's very low. So it's also about knowing where you live, because the minerals in your food can only be there if those minerals exist in the land that food is grown.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Is it, this is going to be, I don't know, a silly question. Is it costly to iodize?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea, but I know iodized sea salt is not very expensive. Like it'll be $2 more than regular sea salt or something. I got no idea.
Well, I'm just wondering if the soil, because it's an extra process, I'm guessing to iodize soil, if there's some states here that don't do it because of the cost of it.
I don't know if we're actually putting iodine into the soil or if while we're processing foods, we're putting it in. And I know in Australia there was a talk about putting iodine into our breads for a while.
Oh, wow.
Because people were so afraid of salt because of blood pressure and other things. They were trying to go, oh, well, what else are people eating a lot of? How can we give them more iodine? So, you know, the dietetics and the food industry in our countries, as much as we have a go a lot of times about what they've created, they are also looking out for us. There's a lot of regulation and trying to support the general population that they're looking at.
Okay, that's what we need. With your experience, how do you see globally? Where do you feel overall the weakness of the conditions of humans? Like, do you feel that it's leaning more towards a sugar issue, salt issue, weight issue? I don't know if that's something that you can even answer. Are you seeing something common that's been happening in the last 10, 20 years, just overall with your patients and just what you hear on the news?
I mean, we all know there's weight issues. There's, you know, we live in this abundant society in developed countries. We know also, you know, one of our biggest problems is poor quality food. Fast food is cheaper than healthy food. You know, there's a lot of issues of low income earners not being able to afford what is considered healthy food. And it's easier for them to get, you know, supersized meals and big liters of, you know, they're getting their calories from very, very nutrient deplete foods. So, you know, I think 70% of the population is overweight or obese. You know, that's a huge issue. The thing I see more in the last decade is autoimmune disease. And autoimmune is your immune system going awry and attacking itself. And I'm not saying we're all going to get immune issues and autoimmune, but I'm seeing a higher prevalence. And this is just my opinion. Clinically, I'm seeing a lot more autoimmune issues, which is a worry that our bodies are attacking ourselves and causing trouble, be it with a thyroid, be it with the immune system. And again,
okay,
that's what I see more in clinical practice, but maybe that's because they're all referring each other to me. I don't, you know, somebody that specializes in cardiovascular might say, oh no, it's all cardiovascular. But yeah, I think we're starting to move so far from our ways of natural living and putting so many chemicals on our body and not being out in nature, not being, you know, we just had 3 years of it lockdown or whatever, right? We weren't getting as much sun, as much exercise. And when it, you know, all of naturopathy, there's this beautiful kind of saying in naturopathy or natural medicine about, they call it nature's 7 doctors, or I say nature's 7 healers rather than using the word doctor. And it's about, if you focus on these 7 things, that is your best way to support your health. I'm not saying you're not still going to get ailments and problems, but the 7, sometimes I see it on social media and it's listed as 6, but traditionally, and you know, this goes back to an old European philosophy of naturopathy. And I know it goes back to a practitioner that was named Paavo Airola, Airola, who was a practitioner in the 60s. And, but I'm sure it goes back hundreds of years. And the 7 points to focus on are sunshine. So getting out in the sun. We know the sun is, you know, certain types of full spectrum light are actually antidepressant. We know the sun helps regulate our circadian rhythms, helps like our sleep-wake cycle, can be almost antidepressant, but we're also going to synthesize vitamin D, which we know vitamin D, we always think about it for bones, but vitamin D is one of the big vitamins. So it's actually a hormone, but to support our immune system. And people with poor immune function often have very low vitamin D levels. So sunshine is number 1.
Write this down, everyone. Write this down.
Number 2 is fresh air. So getting out in clean air, living in the forest rather than LA. Not possible for everybody, but you could also bring this to breath work. using your full lung capacity. We know breath work calms the nervous system, helps support the vagal nerve that everybody's talking about these days. Like the whole thing about oxygenation. So fresh air, sunshine, fresh air, clean water.
Clean water.
Drinking enough fluid, drinking enough healthy fluid. Your body's 68% water or something like that. Healthy diet. Okay. That's a great one. Good luck. But yeah, trying to eat, we call it the 80-20 rule, right? 80% for your health, 20% for pleasure. That's probably my best estimate for everybody. Other really strict naturopaths would say 90-10, but let's go 80-20. Sunshine, fresh air, clean water, healthy diet, movement.
Yep.
Exercise, movement. A lot of people don't realize you can decrease your chance of many, I want to say most, but I don't want to say something incorrectly, but you can decrease your chance of many cancers by more than 50% just by exercising. It's antidepressant. Hopefully it gets you outside. Some of us are in the gym. You get to eat more. It's part of the detoxification. Exercise quiets some of those genes you don't want to turn on as well. So exercise, movement, walking, swimming, anything you can do.
Yeah.
We used to be a lot healthier, but we all used to physically labor a lot more, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Movement.
2 more.
I know. Mental, emotional well-being.
Yeah.
That's massive. Let's put mindfulness in to make it easier. But yeah, working on our emotional health has massive impact. And yes, we can't always fix this, but being aware of our emotional state and supporting that. And the last one is sleep and rest.
All of those. You don't need any more.
That's it. Those are those things. But and I do this in a corporate lecture where we, I go into offices and talk to all these big groups of lawyers and things, not about medical astrology, obviously. But we talk about this and you look at those 7 things and you go, well, that's so stupid. That is so obvious, Kira, right? Like that's what I know they're all saying in the back of their head. Duh. As you would say in kindergarten. But how many of those do we each do every day? And the average person living a busy modern life is hitting 2 to 3. It's very rare people are hitting all 7.
Yeah.
The exercisers hit more than anybody else because exercise makes you use your lungs. It's antidepressant. Usually you get more thirsty. You typically sleep better if you exercise.
Yeah.
You typically eat a bit better. Most people don't exercise and then go, oh, I'm going to go have Krispy Kremes. Like you typically do try to, yeah. So exercise triggers the rest of those. And I know there are people in situations where they can't do a lot of exercise, but there's lots of yoga while sitting and little therabands or anything you can do for movement. That's really, to me, movement is secretly, I am also a sports nutritionist. So this is me coming at you from that. And we call those nature's 7 healers. And that's what health is based around.
Yeah. I've always, when I do readings and people are feeling like their energy's low, I always say, go out, just move, dance, play your favorite song that gets you going.
The best music and dance for movement. Dance at home. Oh my God, we do that all the time. We do a little. We call it a dance off. I think that comes from Grey's Anatomy over the years. But I have a 17-year-old daughter, and we will literally turn on the music super loud and just let it loose for a couple songs.
Especially if you have excess energy, when doing production work, I would come home after maybe 2 weeks of going nonstop, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself. I'm home. I don't do anything.
There's all this beautiful research about exercise actually helping with neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity, for those of you who don't know, are all the neural connections happening in your brain. We want to increase neuroplasticity. You know, it happens in youth as our brain grows, but adults can create neuroplasticity as well. And there's some great studies coming out about the antidepressant effects of exercise, as well as enhancing neural function, cognition, delaying or decreasing somebody's chance of dementia and Alzheimer's from exercise. And there was, but actually getting better marks in school. There's a great book. It's not overly technical, called Spark, like to spark light a spark, about this high school in the Midwest, somewhere in the US, that employed that every student had to do exercise before school to a certain level. And they monitored everyone for the year, getting everyone to do some sort of pretty vigorous exercise before school. And their rate of physical altercations, like fights and other physically dangerous things at the school, their rate of physical altercations dropped from like hundreds in a year to like 5. So less problem there. But they didn't change any of the academics. They didn't change any of the programming of the school. The entire school's academic standing went up, like everybody's marks went up. It was like 10 or 15% without changing the teaching, just because people were exercising, which enhances this chemical in the body called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotropic factor. And BDNF is like growing new branches on your tree. And then if you study right after you exercise, they talk about it as that's like growing the leaves that then all intertalk to each other, and that neuroplasticity. And yeah, exercise is huge. And it drops off in your teenage years because you get so busy studying or being social.
If there's damage to the BDNF, is there a way that those can be healed? Like
if there's a damage to the brain, I don't, it's a chemical that the body makes. I would have to look up where it's actually made.
I'm thinking like B12, because that's supposed to be a vitamin.
B12 is, for the nervous system. Yeah, B12, absolutely. And, again, please don't, this isn't a suggestion to go take any supplements, but there's huge research coming out on creatine as a supplement. Creatine, which is typically given for people who are trying to bulk muscle, because it's a creatine. Phosphocreatine is the chemical in the body that's used for explosive exercise. But there's research on creatine for brain injury, concussion and traumatic brain injury, and creatine really helping. There's some great, we're way off of medical astrology here, but there's some incredible research about it supporting brain health. If you just Google for that, and you'll find the research, as well as there's research about creatine helping with depression. And a lot of people with depression, not everybody with depression, but many people with depression have very low creatine. Creatine is found in our foods in red meat. And so a lot of people that are avoiding eating red meat these days can be low in creatine.
It's also, would that also affect iron? Could the iron be part of that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different situation, different mineral. But yeah, obviously people avoiding red meat, you can get iron from other forms of food, but it's meat forms of food, which are referred to as heme foods, are more readily absorbed. We absorb about 20% of the iron out of animal product, and we absorb about 8 to 12% of the iron out of plant non-heme forms of food. You can enhance that by using vitamin C. I am not pro or against omnivore or vegan, or people can do whatever they want. It's about doing it wisely. And I think we all have genetics that are more predisposed to be good with certain styles of eating, but I'm definitely not here for a argument over meat.
No. I think also generationally, right? Our generation versus, the millennials and the generation coming up after them. I have no idea what's waiting for them. How they're the digital age. We kind of came in, the Gen Xers, we kind of came in just as it was happening, but we got the experience of not being raised in that environment.
Yeah.
We got introduced to it. So I'm just curious to see what's going to happen.
Oh, it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, because I think now the millennials are, in a few more years, are going to be in their 30s, something like that.
So the millennials are in their 30s, even to early 40s. It's the Gen Zs that are in, Gen Z goes to about mid-20s right now. They're like teens to mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the eldest, well, everybody has slightly different dates. And I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people put the generations to certain astrological placements. Like a lot of people do the planet Pluto, to jump back to astrology, the where Pluto change goes really slow.
Yeah.
I think I can't even remember what its orbit is. I want to say 280 years, but I might be pulling that out of a hat. 240, I can't even remember what Pluto's orbit is. But they talk about different generations being like Pluto and Virgo, Pluto and Libra, because it takes depends on how fast it's going, 15 to 20 years for Pluto to move signs.
Correct.
So
yes.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at. It's not quite an exact way to do generations that we've done, but it's fascinating. We never put people into generations like this until baby boomers. Did we? Well, no, we talked about it with baby boomers, right? We talked about, that was the first generation I remember them talking about. And
but then, I think it's been such an explosion, though, more with the millennials, because they are the largest generation, I believe, more so than the Gen Xers and whatnot. So we're seeing them, and we're hearing more about them.
Yeah. And originally the baby boomers were the largest generation, right?
Yes.
Baby boomers bigger generation than Gen X's, but it is fascinating to watch. I mean, I'm a Gen X.
Yeah.
I don't own, I jokingly say that. My daughter is a Gen Z. So it's really interesting. But I lecture at university, so I lecture to all the generations. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating the way they all approach things differently and learn things differently and what's important to them. I think it's beautiful, our uniqueness.
Yeah. And just, to learn from each other, very important, and just to see, what we've experienced, how we could share it with other people if they're open and willing to listen to it. But it is, I can't stop thinking, because I do multiple things for work, and I meet a lot of different people, different walks of life, different social classes, different ages. And they've been wonderful to learn from. I've been humbled by them because they share with me their experience. And a lot of the young ones, the millennials especially, they're concerned because they because of the way things are right now and what's happened in the last few years. They're not lost, but they don't feel like they have a security for their future, because they just don't know what's happening.
Do any of us? We were having this discussion at my house yesterday with, how many movies are sci-fi, kind of apocalyptic.Maybe we've always done apocalyptic, but it feels like there's so many more. Yeah, I got no idea. Gloom. I'm not that predictive of an astrologer, so I've got no idea. And I think there's some magic to be found in what's happening as well. Yeah, we can get really scared about it, but there's also some incredible creativity and things coming.
Exactly.
But maybe that's my little Aries positivity coming in.
No. We have to. Anything else. We have to be open for it. But I think, coming from me, it'd be nice. Well, I think it's up to us and exposing people to let them know that there are things ahead, and to change. We can influence their mindset and know that there's more ahead. First off, just don't read the news. Just kind of ease up on that a little bit. Ease up on social media. Okay, easier said than done. But I think that's part of it, to help with one of the 7 healers.
Yeah. The 7 healers are so powerful. If you just write those down, you just start to focus on one every day or every week. Just have a focus on one. It's amazing where it gets, like the people that don't drink enough fluid, when they finally have enough water every day, they're like, that was a game changer. My joints feel better. I go to the toilet better. I'm doing or sleep. There's a game changer, especially if you can't do a lot of exercise right now. Getting regular sleep, the right amount at the same time every day. No one's talking about this, but like the human body needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and anyone existing off less than 7 hours is actually kidding themselves that they're okay with it. It's just you're used to it, or you're using caffeine or something else that we know scientifically about 7 to 8 hours. It's when your body has a chance to heal. Your brain puts things into long-term memory. In your body deals with the inflammation. We know that if you don't sleep enough, your cortisol goes up, your inflammation goes up. And this is where so many other problems then start to happen. Blood sugar trouble, diabetes, like you lose control. When you're tired, you crave crappier food and you eat worse when you're tired because your brain is like, I'm tired, give me what's quick, and that's sugar. If you can only do one thing for yourself, get enough sleep. And try to go to bed and wake up near the same time every day. I know that's not all possible with a social life, but within an hour, amazing.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think this finding a healthy sleep pattern will definitely, that's one of the starts, and you feel refreshed. If you wake up tired, I know we have to end here in a moment. I know if you wake up tired, you didn't get enough sleep. That's one of the things, and that happens to me. I'm trying to learn how to drink more water, but not so much before I go to sleep, because what happens is I wake up in the middle of the night, and my sleep is disturbed. So I'm aware of this. Just it's making the effort. Let me ask really quickly: does anyone have one last question? Because Kira does need to get to work and get her day going because she is in Australia. So if anyone has one question, take a really good shot to ask Kira. Go ahead and type it in right now. If not, I will have to let her go. Don't hang up immediately when I end it, so I could say bye to you properly.
Sure.
But if you have any questions, just one question right now, please type it in. I know Willie Hermit mentioned that she got COVID, and she said that the vitamins in her body got depleted. She also has MS. So she also has multiple sclerosis. So.
And look, COVID is hard, and it's doing different things to different people. Absolutely. And you know what? Another thing, controversial, not about COVID, but health and illness, is we often don't give our time. Let me do this again. We don't give our body time to heal. We're so rushed. And I understand we have kids and parents and jobs, and I get that we need to get back to life. And I'm not expecting a perfect world, but we expect so much of our body that we push. And sometimes that digs us a bigger hole than we should have had. And there used to be this beautiful word called convalescence. And when I was little, convalescent, people were like, oh, that's a convalescent home. And to me, that was like where you went when you were really old. It was more about, old folks home, or I don't even know the correct term for it anymore. Convalescence had changed its definition, but the original definition of convalescence is to take rest and to rejuvenate and to allow the body to heal. And, before we had antibiotics and all this life-saving stuff, if you got really sick, you then, not that we can all do this, but you went to the seaside and you rested. This is like if you live in England and you go down to the little coast. You rested for a few weeks. The body takes time to heal. And sometimes we, get over things. But for true healing, there's still a couple weeks left. Like if you get a true flu, not COVID, but just a flu, it's often 3 weeks to get over all the symptomatic side to a true flu. It's 3 weeks till you really start feeling better. But at 1 week, everyone's like, oh my God, I still feel terrible. What's going on? Like, we're so impatient with our body, and it takes time. And naturopathically or in traditional medicine, we have all these rules around how, or suggestions for how quickly the body heals. And they say for every month you've had, like, there's like rules of once you are right living, once you are doing the right thing for your body, how quickly do things go away? And they talk about for every month you've had an ailment, once you are on the right things and doing the right things, it's about a week till you really see progress for every month. So say you had an ailment for,
Wow.
yeah. And they say for every year you've had a problem, give your body about a month. It can be a lot quicker, but yeah, it's they're called Herring's direction of cure, these ideas. But even like astrologically, we do timing of illness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, say you were really sick for 7 days, we would actually then, in a lot of illness, we look at the idea that whatever you were acutely sick, give yourself 3 times that to be completely better. I'm not saying you can't go out after a week and go back to work and whatever, but there's another 3 weeks. It's like a lunar cycle. If you think of things under, like the moon has a 28, 29 day cycle. 1 week severely ill, it's another 3 weeks to really get the body up to full speed, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe that.
We don't give ourselves that time because we're frustrated and we're busy and we need to make money and take care of people. But yeah, I think we need to be gentler with ourselves.
Yeah, everyone's looking for a quick fix so that they can get back to life. So they pound down on vitamins, they drink, they do the healing, but they do it in double time. Yeah. And that can actually, I feel that can actually stress the body out because you're not allowing it to naturally do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you more than 100%. You need that time. It's just like a habit. Isn't it something like it takes 30 days to break a bad habit or 90 days to condition yourself to something fully?
Yep.
So it makes perfect sense to apply all of that. Kira, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
This could just obviously go on and on and on. I'd like to have you back in the future.
Of course.
Maybe we could pick a topic and focus on that.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for joining and watching. Mel, Nancy, Michelle Marie, who else do I have here really quick? Emerald Buddha, everyone else who were watching and just not taking part in the chat, but just being there, taking notes. Hopefully remember those 7 healers. That is 7 natural healers. Very important, very common sense, very practical. Start making the change for your body and your mental health. Do it now. It takes longer as you get older. So yes. No time like the present. Do it now. Hang tight, Kira. Thank you so much, everyone. I have some stuff coming up. Oh, Kira, really quick. Do you have anything posting coming up around the corner that you can share with anyone?
Just my website pretty much has all my offers. Do I have any? I'm in the middle of some live classes, but my website has a ton of pre-recorded short or longer courses. What's coming up? I've just done a bunch of stuff, and I have a book in about 6 more months. But there's free downloads on my website and things like that if you want to go have a play around.
There's this
very fun free download,
which goes through all the signs and the planets and talks about what part of the body affects the element, the salts that are affiliated with each of the signs. It's very detailed, very basic. So this could be really a good point.
That's a fun handout.
Yeah,
that's
and I have this nearby, so I make reference to it for my own astrology.
Nice.
Okay, hang tight, Kira. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
And everyone have a good week. I will see you all again soon.